Okay, welcome to Dialing Up Star Trek with Dave. I am your host, Dave. Hello, everyone. I am reviewing today Star Trek Enterprise, Season 4, Episode 3, which is Home. Uh, this is basically just my thoughts and opinions on the episode, and a little rebuttal to some of the things that I hear from my favorite Star Trek podcast, the Pensky Files, as well. From what I can remember from listening to their episodes. Sometimes we disagree, and it's fun to have difference of opinions and maybe get you thinking differently. And it can create a discussion among us Star Trek fans, which I think is fun and really cool, as long as definitely we always keep it cordial and respectful. You can have difference of opinions. I definitely agree with that. So here we go. This is my review of the episode Home. Now, what I want to agree with the Pensky Files is the first scene, Archer's speech. I don't like the way that it is shot as well. I don't like the visuals. I thought it looked horrible. I didn't even like the visual when they showed the ship coming like to the stadium. You could tell that it was completely CGI, and I am a big fan when I'm watching stuff. I guess I want my belief to be my disbelief. That's the way to say it. To be suspended. I want it to be as realistic as possible, even though it is fake. That's why I'm a huge fan. My favorite superhero trilogy is the Dark Knight trilogy, because it's realistic. As realistic as it can be, and also because of the character work and the writing and so much, the acting, etc. This does not look realistic at all. This almost reminds me of The Matrix, the second movie in the franchise, when Neo is fighting Smith in that movie, the first fight. And he's fighting all of the Smiths, and you have him throwing Smith into the other Smiths, and it's like a bowling ball sound, like you hear, like it sounds like you're knocking down bowling pins. Like it just, I did not like that CGI, and I did not like this CGI. The people are ridiculously far away from the podium. You would think that they would sell seats that you could get closer, like to a concert. It's just weird. Obviously they did that, I agree, because they were trying to, I guess, not have you realize that it is CGI, but it was an epic fail if that was their attempt. It was kind of like, really? I did not like it at all. I don't see why you couldn't have had real people. So I would have had real people. I don't get it at all. I guess it's like a budget thing. Where I would disagree with the Pensky Files is I don't think that the speech is horrible. I'm not saying it's a great speech. By far, I'm not saying it's a great speech. It's nowhere near. Like, when I think, honestly, when I think of great speeches in Star Trek, I think of Jean-Luc Picard. I think of Patrick Stewart. I think we all think of that. Now, there have been other characters in Star Trek that have made great speeches, but he's definitely one you think of. And this is not on par, even close to on par with that. So I'm not trying to say this is like an epic speech, but I don't think it's a horrible speech. Maybe Bakula doesn't act it greatly. But basically what he says in the speech is, he says, some people would call us heroes. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, when I think of making things realistic, and that's what I like in shows and movies, I feel like I gotta think about what if this existed in my time right now, right? To kind of bring it home to see if I can relate to it. If we had an alien species that came and like took out one of our cities, and then we had people go on a ship and stop them from doing it again, we would call them heroes. Right? Think about it. 9/11, it's obviously we don't have aliens, but we had another nation come, right? Well, I mean, not nation, I guess you could say. It's a terrorist group. But you had foreigners come and take out the Twin Towers. When our soldiers went overseas and stopped them and then took out Osama bin Laden and stuff, they were considered heroes. So it makes sense that Captain Archer is saying, I hear that some people call us heroes, but I like his humility where he is not calling himself a hero, where he's not going damn straight, but where he's also building up his crew and saying, I would agree about my crew. So it's showing his pride for his crew, for those under his command, but he's not calling himself a hero. And then he says, we also have to think about the heroes that have fallen. That's stuff that we say all the time, right? Like firemen at the Twin Towers would say, maybe the chief would say, those under my command did a great job, but let's also remember the fallen heroes. So I think that's a good statement. That's what it would make sense that that's what somebody would say. And he says, it's good to be home. It's good to be home finally. So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong or out of place with that speech. To me, it kind of makes sense. I'm not saying you can't make it better, but I can't think in my head necessarily how you make it better. So I disagree that it's horrible speech. I don't even necessarily think that Bakula says it wrong. And they say in the Pensky files, Wes says he doesn't like the speech, and he says he thinks the writing of the speech is bad. I completely disagree with that. I'm sorry. I feel like if you think of it in the terms of like 9/11 and things like that, those are things people would say. So, but I think that the optics and the visuals are horrible. I 100% agree with that. Okay, I want to comment on someone who commented near the end of the Pensky files. I completely agree with what they said. I thought it was funny. They said that I believe they said something to the extent of this is one of the very few times that the song of Star Trek Enterprise, the music of Star Trek Enterprise, actually felt appropriate for this episode after the cold open or something like that. And I agree with that. I think that's funny. I love Star Trek music. I'm a Star Trek nerd, so when I'm watching other Star Trek series, my wife rolls her eyes as I'm humming along. I'm sitting there going, dun 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 dun, and I'm getting all excited. Or I like Deep Space Nine. I like Voyager a lot. I like the music with that as well. I got to admit, I know Wes and Clay talked about when I was listening to them, when I first started listening to Star Trek Enterprise, they talked about it's probably like Faith of the Heart is probably like Star Trek karaoke. I do sing it when I watch the show. I don't always, I sometimes do, but don't always fast forward through it. I do sing it. I don't sing it necessarily the way that Clay sings it. Faith of the Heart. I don't do that. I just, sing the song. But it's not one of my favorites. And what I would say is this, and that is, for the first season, Faith of the Heart is okay. It's still, I wish they would have just went with just music. I completely agree. I heard somebody had said there's like a Archer theme song, which, from what I understand, is basically the music to the credits of the show. And I think that's actually pretty good. And I think they should have just done that for the beginning of the show as well. I think that's kind of on par with Star Trek theme songs. That would be much better. But the Faith of the Heart is okay. It's like, alright. But when they made it all like, what is it, disco, or they made it all, fast paced, I was like, you've gone too far. You probably have gone too far in the beginning with season 1, but you've gone way too far now. And I would agree, it is hilarious to have at the beginning of season 4, right, when they're they go through time, and they're all of a sudden in the middle of World War II, and planes have come and they're shooting up to, all of a sudden, let's dance or whatever. It's just I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I completely agree. But this is supposed to be more of an upbeat story where they make it home, so it's okay for this time. I would agree. Now, there are 3 separate stories in this episode. There is the Flock story, the Trip into Paul story, and the Archer story. And we're introduced to the Archer story first, where he's at the bar, and he meets his ex-girlfriend, basically. With the Archer story, I wish they would have went with more of a PTS thing. Like, they kind of do, or PTSD, I'm sorry, wow, a PTSD thing. They kind of tease it, because when they're up on the mountain, he says, he basically says, this took something away from me, like my humanity, and I just can't seem to get it back. To me, that type of dialogue is reminiscent of, and this is from somebody who hasn't served, and God bless, and always pray. We should always, I don't think if we're honest, we do it enough. We should always pray for those who serve our country, who are our soldiers. And I don't want to even, I think it's very insensitive to try and pretend to think that you know something if you haven't experienced it. So I don't want to act like I'm an expert, but I guess from my limited understanding, that to me comes across as something that a soldier who's having a tough time, who may have come back from Iraq or some other fighting, who's dealing with PTSD, would say and would express that they're having a hard time, and maybe they feel like they've lost a part of their humanity. So I think that's good dialogue on the mountain later on, and I wish that they would have honed in on that PTSD a little bit more and made us believe a little bit more. Not that it's like completely unbelievable with what he's gone through, or not that they don't sell it at all, but I wish they would have really sold it a little bit more. For example, in this bar scene, when she taps him or touches him, I'm not saying I wish he would have swung around and punched her or something. But I wish he would have, like, flinched or something, or jumped a little bit to show, because I feel like, and again, I think my understanding of PTSD is more probably from, like, shows and movies, I guess. So I could be completely wrong, and if so, put it in the comments. Not many people do comment, I guess, but I hope to really foster discussion as well. So, but from what I've seen, it seems like sometimes soldiers who are going through PTSD will have that little flinch or something, because maybe they're thinking like they're ready to be in a fight, and they always have to be ready when they're at war. So when they come home, it's tough. Somebody touches you, you might flinch or whatever. So I wish they would have done something like this at the bar, for example. I think it was good that he didn't want to talk about it. I think that was a good sign to show he didn't really want to talk about what happened over there, and he kind of deflects it by saying, I don't want to, the briefing is coming up and I don't want to spoil anything, so I thought that was okay. Then we're introduced to the to Paul and Trip storyline, which basically is T'Pol is going to get married. Spoiler alert, but I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you've watched the episode. And Trip loves her and is in love with her. And I think it's the first time that he actually admits that he's in love with her. In the episode where they clone him, which is in episode 3, forget what the title of it is, but Trip falls, has an accident like in engineering, and he's like in like a coma, and they don't know if he's gonna make it. And so then Phlox makes a clone of him. They call him like Sim or Sims or something. In that episode, they find a way around it. I guess technically Trip or whatever. It's confusing. But basically find out he has feelings for T'Pol. He thinks about her all the time. He's crazy about her or something. But this is an episode where he actually says, I'm in love with her. And so that's the whole story arc with them, is he's in love with her and she's going to get married. I think that Trip, the actor and actress, and the character of Trip and T'Pol have pretty good chemistry together, I would say. But the Pensky Files makes a point to say that this episode is frustrating because it shows how underdeveloped these characters are. That by the time we're in this episode where we're finally getting like a lot of character development, it's like you haven't done that for so long that it's hard to buy, maybe. I think is what they're trying to say. It's hard to buy now.
I like what the show is trying.
Oh, sorry. I was listening to them earlier. I do enjoy the show, but it's hard to buy what the characters are because they haven't done enough. And I agree with that. I think this is a perfect example. I think Star Trek has a hard time with romance. Star Trek does flings very well, right? One night stands and flings, because that happens a lot in Star Trek. Where basically like Riker, right? Riker's known for, or Kirk. They like have like romantic scenes with an alien, but basically it's a one night stand because they get it on with that person and then they fly away. So it's like a fling. But when you're talking about actual romance, Star Trek doesn't do actual romance very well. Usually when they do actual romance, the best that they can do, it usually happens with people that are serving aboard the ship together for long periods. But I don't even think that they do that well. Like, for example, I really like Riker and Troy, and I don't think they do enough in the 7 seasons. They hint at things sometimes. They kind of let you know they have a history. Early on, you see things in like the first season or two, but they don't really do a lot, I feel like, for the rest of the seasons. And then all of a sudden, in the movie, he shaves, and I think it's not First Contact, not Generations, which is first actually, Insurrection. So I guess I accept it because I was hoping for it for so long, and I know they have a history, and they do have some scenes, like when Troy is possibly gonna marry the guy who ends up going on the ship that has an illness because he's been painting her or something, which is weird, and she has paintings of him or something. They have a scene where I think they hug like in the holodeck or something, and it's kind of sweet. And I think there's even a scene when it looks like Riker's going to leave the ship, and they're saying they have a hard time, but I don't feel like they do enough. But I think they do they do a better job of showing that romance than they do of showing the Trip and T'Pol romance. Because all they really have is that they massage each other. They seem to not get along at all, which I guess it makes me think of an Andy Griffith Show episode. I'm an old man, right? I'm only 37, but I love Andy Griffith. And there's an episode where he goes to break up a marriage quarrel between a married couple, and he brings them to jail, and he's like, you guys gotta stop, you're disturbing the peace, and you're really loud, and you're throwing things. And he's trying to teach them, come on, what do you say in the morning when you see each other? And the husband says, or what do you say at breakfast in the morning? What's the first thing you say to each other? And the husband says, first thing I say every morning, yuck. Because he doesn't like her cooking or whatever. And he goes, no, you gotta say, morning, honey. You gotta say, morning, dear. And then they say, they start to be nicer to each other, but they're meaner. They're mean and nasty to the other people in the town. And Aunt Bee says, oh, maybe they like it better when they're quarreling. Maybe that's how they show their love. I mean, I don't really get that, but that's the point of that episode. But I agree with the Pensky Files. I do not buy this romance. I buy the lust. I buy the fact that we see each other without our shirts on, and we're massaging each other, and we want each other, I guess. But I don't buy like the romance, and I don't think that they really show it. And I think they try to show it here, and I'm like, it's a little too late now. I mean, I guess this is a good start, but yeah, I don't buy it. But I guess I would say I think it's nice that she invites him to come to her planet and stay at her house when he says he's staying on the ship. I wonder if he's like trying to ask to go home with her. If he's like hinting at it. Because she's like, what's up? And he's like, Nothing, just staying here. The captain said I should go on vacation, but got nowhere to go, so I'll just stay here. I guess this is my home. He sees her packing, so I think he knows where she's going, so I kind of feel like he's trying to fish for an invitation. But I mean, it's kind of cute that and kind of nice that she says like, "Hey, you can come home with me." And I know that the mom later on says, "You've never brought anyone home," so I guess that's kind of sweet. Yeah. Um, I actually kind of like the next scene in which Archer is on his ex-girlfriend's new ship and they're refitting it. Because he's trying to give her advice, and from his experience and his knowledge, and she's welcoming it. I like his story. I like the story that he tells. I think it shows character development, that he's basically admitting that he was naive. He was naive enough to tell the guy when he's telling the story that he had a fight with this guy, he had a disagreement with this guy about something. You see his character development. You see how he went from being a naive person to realizing you gotta be able to protect yourself. And you also maybe see that he wishes that wasn't so. But I guess, like, you see that he loses, like, his innocence because he realizes that it's a dark universe and it's not all kind and welcoming. There are bad people out there. And I think that's a good scene because he says, I told him I didn't want to be in command of a warship. I didn't want all these weapons, but he was right. And you need to be able to protect your people. And I think that was a good revelation. I do. I kind of wish that maybe they would have had a scene on this ship, to be honest, because they have a scene on the mountain where he's dreaming and he's having a bad dream, which is a good scene, and the Zindi are attacking him, and then she wakes him. I think that's a good scene because if we're going along with this PTSD theme, they can have bad nightmares and bad dreams. So that's a good thing. I wish they would have took a minute and had him exploring the ship itself and not, like, the bridge is definitely fine, keep that, but maybe just like another minute of him walking the ship, and maybe where he kind of has like a flashback and he thinks he's like fighting the Zindi and she has to like stop him, or maybe somebody else stops him and he like almost hits them, or maybe does hit them, and she can see even more just how broken he is because of this. I think that would have been a good addition. I also like the next scene in which he is debriefing and he's in front of his superiors and the Vulcans. I like that they're questioning him. You see the conflict. Thought it was interesting that they were like, "Are you a medical expert that you couldn't have saved this Vulcan ship?" And he says, "Well, Flock said they were unsavable," and they're saying, "Well, our doctors said we don't know." You see the consequences of what they had to go through in the previous season, where he had to blow up and destroy a Vulcan ship and a Vulcan crew. And I thought that was interesting. I thought it was good for them to have consequences, and to have questions of, did you do the right thing? And I think it shows what can happen in our world today, where we as people, or people that are here in America, can question what our soldiers are doing over there, but we don't know what it's like to be in the middle of that fight, and I think that what the Vulcans are doing, and what especially the Vulcans are doing, they're being the armchair quarterback, right? Like when I watch a football game with my friend, he'll be like, oh my goodness, he should have thrown the pass to that guy. It's like, well, we're watching from a TV. We can see the whole thing. Like, we don't know what it's like to be in the middle of it. And so I like that dilemma of somebody questioning somebody when they didn't know what it was like to actually be there. And for that guy for Archer to be frustrated. Like, you're trying to call me a murderer. I didn't want to murder those people. I loved the part where he says, I had more help from the Andorians. And if we had listened to you, Earth probably would have been destroyed. I don't like the end of the episode when he basically just says I was out of line. I wish he hadn't just apologized, because I think that's a fair thing to say. And I was having trouble. I was thinking about it. I was going, does it make sense? I was thinking maybe the Vulcans couldn't help Archer, because obviously whenever they sent a ship, they just went nuts. But then I was thinking, T'Pol made it through, and all she got was addicted to this stuff. If she wouldn't have got addicted to this stuff, she would have been fine. But I guess the only thing I can think of is so in my head, what I'm thinking is, I think the Vulcans could have gone into the Expanse and helped the humans. They just would have had to not put Trillian around their hole. So they would have had to deal with the spatial anomalies. So he's right, they should have helped him, but the only thing I can think of is maybe they didn't figure out that we can't use Trillian, but you would think you'd figure out, because you'd go, man, those people went nuts. But maybe they didn't know that it was Trillian, and so maybe really what the Vulcans' mistake was not going to investigate what happened to their ship more. So there's some dilemma there. Like, should they have gone to help the humans? Could they have? I don't know. But I like that scene. This is where I want to have some interesting discussion. I have noticed that Wes has a problem with Vulcans in Star Trek Enterprise. I do to some degree, but I disagree as well. Wes does not like when they show emotion. And I've been thinking about this a lot. This is what I want to say. My thoughts on it are this. The Vulcans have emotions. They have very strong emotions, apparently. It doesn't seem like the Vulcans have like a special mutant, like special powers or mutant abilities that's how they're able to suppress their emotions. They have some telepathy because they can do the mind meld thing. So they have that ability, but the ability to suppress their emotions is not like the telepath ability. That is a discipline, and I think that's different. So that's a choice that they are making to constantly try to suppress their emotions. I don't think necessarily, like, here's a question. Do you think that if a human decided to say, I want to go live on Vulcan and I want to do that, I want to suppress my emotions, that they could do that? And I kind of think the answer is yes. Because again, it's not like a special power or something. It's just that the Vulcans have chosen to practice a discipline. And I do remember seeing something, it might have been even Star Trek Enterprise, where someone, I believe it was, I'm going to go with yes, because it definitely wasn't the original series, it wasn't TNG, there was Silik a couple times and Spock a couple times, but it wasn't that one. I don't think it was Voyager. There wasn't really much Vulcans on TNG. I haven't really watched. I'm watching Picard. It wasn't on that, but I haven't really watched Discovery yet. Lower Decks is funny and good, but it wasn't on that. So I believe it was on this show that somebody comes to T'Pol in one of the episodes and basically says something like, "How do you not feel the heartache and the pain," or something like that? And I believe that she says, like, I can teach you these meditation techniques and things like that. So I think if a human wanted to, they could. And so what I'm trying to say is that the Vulcans aren't special in the sense of nobody could do what they're doing with suppressing their emotions, I believe. They don't have like some technology either that's helping them. So it's a discipline. So when I think of it as a discipline and I think about it in compared to our day and age, I think of like, Kung Fu or, Hinduism, like, like monks or something, or like a fighting technique. It's a skill that you're constantly developing. And so therefore, you can have mistakes. They're not perfect. And so I think it makes perfect sense that they're constantly trying to suppress their emotions, and they're going to struggle with that. And you're going to see emotions come up through the surface. You're going to see them mess up. I completely think it's perfectly fine to see Vulcans showing some emotions sometimes. I think the difference is, I think this is what Vulcans should do. Vulcans should be trying so hard to do their discipline of suppressing emotions, and then there's going to be times where they backslide or where they mess up, and you're going to see emotions. But I think when you see that, you should see them reacting like, oh shoot, like I messed up, let me correct this, without saying it. And that is the difference. I think like Wes has a problem. Wes has a problem with the pilot episode where he doesn't like that one of the Vulcans from the High Command like raises his voice. But I like that scene when he raises his voice, and when Archer says, "Hey, you raised your voice," he looks embarrassed. He looks like he messed up. and he stops. He doesn't continue to indulge in that emotion. He goes back and controls himself. Now you might say, how come he doesn't apologize? Because Vulcans are in denial. They don't want to admit that they showed that emotion. Spock did that all the time. If you watch the original series, whenever he would have an emotional, he'd break his technique, his discipline. He wouldn't admit to it. I just watched today, because I was thinking about it, Amok Time, which is episode 1 of season 2 of the original series. You have that big scene where Spock thinks Kirk is dead, and he's on the ship, and he sees Kirk. And he doesn't just go, oh, I'm glad to see you. He goes, Kirk! He gets all excited and a big smile. And he's like, that is a major break in his discipline. He's showing big time emotion, right? And then you see it again. What happens? He realizes, and then he gets serious again and he stops. And I'm pretty sure I remember from that scene that when they call him out on it, he doesn't just say, yeah, shoot, I messed up. I'm gonna go back to my discipline of not doing emotion, and I'm gonna be in denial and pretend I didn't do it. And I feel like that's what Vulcans do. The Vulcans seem to only admit when they are messing up, when it's something like a disease or an outside factor has hurt their ability. Then they'll go, oh, see, it's this fault. This is why I can't do good at my practice. But when they mess up themselves, they go to denial. That is completely exactly what Vulcans do, at least from what we've seen. So I think that you can see Vulcans have emotions, and I think you're going to. Because to me, it makes... I think of like a discipline, like Kung Fu, or you're trying to have discipline with your body, like working out and stuff like that. Some people are going to be better at it than others. So some Vulcans are going to be great at it, and some Vulcans are going to struggle more. And so I think it's cool to see that you don't have... Like, come on, Wes, don't put all Vulcans into one box and make them one-dimensional. You're going to see different Vulcans, and some Vulcans you see, you're going to be like, wow, they're really good at their discipline and their practice. And some Vulcans you're going to see, you're going to go, they're really struggling. So I think that is what a Vulcan is, because I've tried to look into it, and I don't think they have special abilities. So I disagree a little bit with Wes in his critique of Vulcans. Unless he's saying that's what he wants Vulcans to be. I don't think that's what Vulcans are shown to be throughout Star Trek. Another thing I wanted to say was, I thought was interesting. This is, to me, more evidence as to how Vulcans are not always perfectly logical as you might think. Amok Time. I want to go back to that episode because I watched it today. Spock confronts his wife and asks her, why did you do this? Why did you challenge and have somebody challenge me to the death? I forget what it's called. And it's interesting, because she doesn't really show emotion. Like, she's not emotional. But you can actually tell that she is emotional. And I was thinking about that. Can you be emotional? It's weird, but the paradox of, can you be emotional even if you're not showing emotion? And I feel like you can. For example, if I think somebody's a jerk, and I'm very calm, and let's say somebody has hurt me, and I don't yell, and I don't scream, and I don't get in their face, and I don't make really angry faces, and I just sit there and I go, I just want to say that you're a jerk, and you're a horrible person, so have a nice day. I'm emotional. I'm just doing it in a calm, cold, cool collective. And I think Vulcans can do that, and then we mistake it for, oh, they don't have emotion. And I think Amok Time is a perfect example. Amok Time, I guess I'm saying it wrong. It's not Amok, it's Amok Time, sorry. Amok Time is a perfect example of that. Spock's wife, about to be ex-wife, shows no emotion. She is cold, cool, and collective. She's a smooth operator. Okay? And he asks her, why did you do this? Now, when she gives her explanation for her plan, where she says, step one, I was going to challenge you, and if Kirk accepted, and then this is what would happen, and it would work out for me, and if he didn't accept, this is what would happen, and it would work out for me, and if this happened, it's okay. So she basically says, like, A, B, C, no matter what in my plan, it would have worked out for me. Okay, that's logical. She's thought about it logically. She's figured out a plan logically. And Spock goes, yes, great logic. And I agree with that. However, her reason for not wanting to be married to Spock anymore, I defy you to defend that is logical. Because it's not logical. The reason why she doesn't want to be married to Spock is emotional. She may not be showing emotions, or she may be calm, cool, and collective, but it's emotional why she doesn't want to be married to Spock. Because what is the reason that she gives to Spock as to why she doesn't want to be married to him anymore? She basically says that you are a celebrity. I mean, she doesn't actually use the word, I don't think she uses the word celebrity, but she basically says, like, he's famous. So he's famous now. Okay, I think that's what she says. So he's famous. So why, Spock says, why don't you want to be married to me anymore? She says, you're famous, and I don't want to be married to somebody that's famous. That doesn't give a logical explanation. That's just you saying, I don't want. My emotions, what I want. That's not giving a logical reason. Right? The Vulcans don't do that. Like when Trip says in, like, I think season 1, hey, T'Pol, do you want to go and get married? This is when she breaks off with her fiancé. Because when they, in this episode of Home, when T'Pol and Trip go to visit her home, and her mom says, you have a message from Koss or whatever, it's her ex-fiancé, and she even says it. So they've already broken technically their engagement, or, well, it's a little dicey, but she has broken it off. She has said that, right? So in season 1, when Trip accidentally reads her letter, he says, what do you want to do? Do you want to go and marry him, or do you want to stay on the ship? And she says, no, it's not about what I want, because that's not logical. So when this soon-to-be ex-wife of Spock in Amok Time says, you're famous and I don't want to be married to a famous person, that's not logical. That goes against, quote-unquote, word logic. That's showing her emotions, even though she's not smiling or crying or getting all emotional. She is making an emotional decision. And then what does she say? She says, this guy wanted me and I wanted him too. That is not freaking logical. That is all emotional. And I was like, wow, how did we miss this? Just because she's like, I'm not going to show emotions. You're still making an emotional decision. It's not a logical decision. And Spock doesn't call her out on that, which I think is interesting. What would have been a logical explanation is if she would have said something like, I don't know, you can put in the comments what you think would have been a logical explanation for her. Maybe if she would have said, you've become famous, and because of that, it has hurt my work because I've had to, answer too many fan letters or something, right? I don't know. Like, I find it weird that Vulcans would get into the, like, I can't imagine, like, Vulcan paparazzi or something, because she's saying he's famous, so, like, what's the problem? He's not even with her. Does she have to answer too many fan letters or something? Like, I don't understand. But she doesn't give a logical reason. And so I think that my point for something to think about would be that Vulcans can show emotions or can make emotional decisions. The whole point of Vulcans what I think Vulcans are people that are trying to not make emotional decisions, to make logical decisions, and trying not to allow. I think Wikipedia says they're trying to make logical decisions and not allow their emotions to control their decisions, and they're trying not to show emotions. But guess what? They mess up all the time, and I think that is the point. The point is not that they are perfect, but they are messing up all the time. So yeah. And I think that some people would be better at the discipline than others. You're gonna have layers. They have I can't remember what it's called. It starts with a K, I think. They talk about it in the movie, in the Star Trek The Motion Picture. Spock is trying to achieve it. Now, I read a little bit into that to understand it, and that is an intense practice where they're really trying to purge their emotions completely. I don't know how successful that is, but it says, when I was reading into it, it says it takes 2 to 6 years. It says that not every Vulcan has chosen to do that. And so again, it shows how they can show emotion. They're just trying not to. So I disagree. I'm sorry, I disagree with Wes. And not everybody has chosen to go to that extreme, to do that discipline, to try to completely purge all emotions. I read into it, and Spock tried, and then he wasn't successful. They said that Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager, later on in his life, starts down that journey and then abandons it and goes and marries somebody or something and starts a family. So I think it's okay for Vulcans to be flawed and to show. I think it's good. I mean, Clay always talks about how I think he always says something like he likes the struggle. And I think it's good to see the struggle and not just to see robots. Like, these are not robots. Data is an android who can't feel. The point of Data is, like, here's what I would say to Wes. When you're mad that Vulcans show emotions sometimes, you're confusing Vulcans and androids. Data should not show emotions. If Data has a slip up and is showing emotions, that's a problem because he's an android. Though if you watch Picard, androids have emotions now. But in Star Trek The Next Generation, that would be a slip up. Unless he has his emotion chip. Vulcans are not androids. Vulcans are basically people trying to not give in to their emotions and to not show their emotions, but I believe, are going to fail numerous times. And depending on the Vulcan, some Vulcans are going to be better at it, and some Vulcans are going to be worse at it. And I think the key is this. I think this is really the key. I really believe this. And I think of it when I think of Spock from the original series and other Vulcans. I think the key is this. The key is when they mess up, when they show emotion, that for the most part, they catch it. They realize, oh shoot, I messed up. And then they stop and they correct course and they correct themselves. And then they deny. Because that's what Spock did all the time in the original series. You know, what does he do? He goes, Jim, I'm so excited, Jim! And then then you see his face, he goes, or something like that. His face turns very quickly where he goes, oh, shoot. And then he corrects himself, and then he denies. So these Vulcans are allowed to show emotions if they do something like that. That's what I would say. I would like to challenge the thinking on Vulcans with that. So yeah, I want to wrap it up. I want to say this is an okay episode. if I think of the 3 stories with the trip and to Paul's story, it was okay. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I wish he would have just told her I love you. When he's telling the mom that he didn't want to, he wanted to tell her right then and there when they were standing somewhere where there's like mountains and fire pits or something, but he couldn't. And then he said, if I tell her now, she might call it off, or worse, she might not call it off. The only thing that I like about that scene is that it reveals a little bit of the truth when he says that. When he says, or she might not call it off, it reveals that he's afraid. He's basically saying he's subtly saying, if I tell her how I feel, she might reject me. But I think it's just weird, because then you're thinking, well, if they get married, which they do get married, are they closing the door on this romance? Because I don't believe Vulcans, they're not like flocks. They're not going to have multiple wives, I didn't think. It shows that he's afraid. But they're not like flocks. Sorry. I'm going to be honest. I had to pause it for a second. My daughter needed something, apparently, so I don't think I edited it the best, so I'm sorry. But what I was saying was, I don't get it. I guess they're closing the door on the relationship, but I remember I've seen this series a few times, that they have like an episode where they have like a kid, and it's weird. I don't know. I get it that Vulcans have arranged marriages. Wes says he's confused because he feels like there's a reason for her to get married, but why would he want to get married? But I always thought that arranged marriages didn't necessarily benefit the kids. I felt like maybe it would benefit the families. And also at the same time, I wonder if arranged marriages, like, I guess I don't know enough how they work. I understand that the families arrange it maybe when they're kids, but I'm thinking to myself, do they do the transaction of the families arranging the marriage and then one family getting something and another family getting something? Do they do it back then? So maybe it makes more sense that to Paul's family and his family already got something out of it. Like, maybe, like, I don't know, maybe they were like, here, you can have this plot of land, okay, you can have this business or something, I don't know. So I don't think necessarily there needs to be an exchange of benefits now. And I understand, I feel like women with arranged marriages can be shunned or something like that if they say no. So maybe I see the point of her, the pressure she has by her society to go through with this, but she's already like told him no like a while ago. So I kind of wish they wouldn't have got married. That's the hopeless romantic in me. I don't get it. I don't know how they get her out of this marriage to let her continue with Trip, even though they kill Trip, and I hate that at the end of the 4th season. Maybe what they should have done is not kill Trip and just kill